They poured wine on him in front of 200 guests. Called him a gatecrasher. Told him to leave before security made him. Laughed loud enough for the nearest 3 tables to hear. Nobody stopped it. Nobody said a word. And the man they did it to, the man standing there with red wine spreading across a charcoal suit worth more than Gregory Vaughn's watch, said absolutely nothing. Did not flinch. Did not raise his voice. Did not reach for his phone or his wallet or his name. He just looked at Gregory once. And then he walked out. That was the moment everything ended. Most people in that room just didn't know it yet. Phones had it all. Every angle. The wine leaving the glass, the silence, the walk to the door. Someone posted it before Alexander had even reached the lobby. By the time his car pulled away from the Elysian Grand, the clip had been shared 11,000 times. By morning, it would be the most talked about 30 seconds in the history of a company that had spent 2 decades trying to build a reputation worth having. They destroyed it in one. And the man they destroyed it over? He had already made the call. Before we go any further, what Gregory Vaughn did next, and what Alexander Sterling did about it, is the kind of story that does not come around often. If this is already pulling you in, hit that subscribe button now. We bring these stories because they matter, and we need you there when they land. Now, let's go back to the beginning. You know the kind of evening where the room is too polished, the laughter is too loud, and something underneath all of it feels like it is one wrong move away from breaking? That was the Elysian Grand Ballroom. That was the night Alexander Sterling walked in. He wore a charcoal suit. Neat. Simple. Perfectly fitted, but the kind of fit that does not announce itself. Dark hair combed back, a touch of silver at the temples, and eyes that moved across a room the way a camera lens moves, slow, deliberate, catching everything without settling on anything. No gold. No logo. No signal of any kind that said look at me. He liked it that way. Let the room make its assumptions. Let them file him wherever their instincts told them he belonged. By the end of the night, the assumptions would be the most expensive thing in the building. Chandeliers hung low over white tablecloths set for 200. A string quartet played something that filled the silence without disturbing it. The air carried the smell of opened wine and warm bread and the particular kind of money that does not need to explain itself. Every third person had a phone in their hand. Nobody wanted to be the one who was present for something historic and had nothing to show for it. On every screen above the bar, a logo turned slowly. Silver lettering on white. Hail Quantum Systems. The name on everyone's lips for the past 3 weeks. An $800 million partnership deal with a mystery investor nobody had been able to identify. The number alone was enough to make the room hum. People who already had more than they needed were standing in clusters, speaking in the low, careful tones of people performing wealth for each other, pretending they had known all along that something this significant was coming. Alexander moved through them slowly. Hands in his pockets. Shoulders easy. Eyes still moving. He had been stopped at the door. The security guard, young broad, wearing the expression of someone who has been given a small amount of authority and intends to use all of it, had looked him over once and said, "Are you on the vendor list, sir?" Alexander had taken out his invitation. Black card. Silver seal. The guard had looked at it, looked at him, and stepped aside without a word. The silence said everything the guard had chosen not to. Inside, a woman in gold sequins pulled her clutch to the other arm as Alexander passed. A man at the bar, navy tuxedo, practiced smile, the air of someone who had been in exactly this kind of room one too many times and had started to believe it was his natural habitat, stepped directly in front of him and said, without turning around, "Staff orders go through the side station." Alexander shifted 1 step to the left. Ordered water. Tipped the bartender. He did not explain himself. If tonight went the way it was designed to go, no explanation would be necessary. Across the room, near the edge of the stage, a woman in a cream blouse stood very still with a tablet pressed to her chest, scanning the crowd with the focused attention of someone who was looking for a specific face and was beginning to feel the particular anxiety of not finding it. Clara Whitfield. Assistant. Observer. The only person in the Elysian Grand Ballroom who knew exactly who Alexander Sterling was, and exactly what his presence in this room tonight meant. She found him near the far column. Their eyes met across 200 people and a string quartet and $800 million. She mouthed one word. Sorry. He gave her the smallest nod. He had known. He had come anyway. Near the front of the room, The host raised the microphone and the chatter dropped away. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hale Quantum Systems Partnership Gala. Applause. Practiced, immediate, filling the room on cue. On the screens, the logo brightened. Somewhere near the stage, a man in a designer navy suit with a gold watch that caught every available light turned toward the crowd with the wide, easy smile of someone who believed, completely and without question, that this night belonged to him. Gregory Vaughan. Beside him, Leonard Hastings, silver-haired, commanding, the kind of man whose stillness alone communicated authority, surveyed the room with the measured satisfaction of someone who had spent 30 years learning how to close deals and believed he was 90 minutes away from the largest one of his career. The room watched them. The phones tilted upward. Someone near Alexander said Gregory's name in the tone people use for men they want something from. Every eye in the Elysian Grand Ballroom was on Gregory Vaughan. Every eye except one. Alexander Sterling stood at the far edge of the room, beside his column, hands in his pockets, and watched the man who was about to humiliate him take his applause. He already knew what Gregory was going to do. He was waiting to see if he would. The whispers reached Gregory before the wine glass did. Alexander Sterling arrived at the Elysian Grand at 8:43. Not late. Not early. The kind of punctual that belongs to men who do not need an entrance. The car stopped at the front steps and he stepped out without waiting for the driver to come around, buttoning the single button of his charcoal suit jacket with the unhurried ease of someone who had stood in rooms far larger than this one and felt nothing but steady. The night air was cold and clean. Above the entrance, the Hale Quantum logo glowed in pale silver against the stone facade. He looked at it for exactly 1 second, then walked forward. The doors were held open for the couple ahead of him, floor-length gown tuxedo, the particular kind of loud gratitude people perform when they want the room to know they have arrived. The doors began to close. Alexander caught one with his hand and stepped through unannounced. The guard inside was the first. A broad young man with a clipboard and the expression of someone taking his role very seriously looked Alexander over from collar to shoe, charcoal suit, no tie, no emblem, no signal, and said, with the careful neutrality of someone who had been trained to be polite while still being dismissive, "Are you on the vendor list, sir?" Alexander reached into his inside pocket and produced the invitation. Black card. Silver seal. The kind of card that did not get printed in quantities larger than it needed to be. The guard looked at it. Looked at him. Stepped aside. No apology. Alexander did not wait for one. He moved into the ballroom the way he always moved through spaces that had not decided what to make of him yet, quietly, unhurried, taking the room in without offering it anything in return. The chandeliers. The white tablecloths. The quartet. The smell of wine and warm bread and 200 people performing the best versions of themselves for each other. He found a column near the far wall and stood beside it. Close enough to see everything. Far enough that no one would think to look. Gregory Vaughan did not enter a room so much as activate it. He came through the side corridor at 8:55 with the momentum of a man who had predecided that the night was already going well, navy suit sharp under the chandelier light, gold watch catching every available gleam as he moved. His blonde hair was set with the kind of precision that takes effort to make look effortless. His smile was already at full width before he had cleared the doorway, aimed at no one in particular and everyone at once. The nearest cluster of guests turned. Then the next. A small radiating acknowledgement that moved outward from him like a stone dropped in still water. He found Leonard Hastings near the far end of the bar, silver-haired, black suit, cufflinks that caught the light without asking for it. Leonard had the stillness of a man who had closed enough rooms to know that the ones worth closing did not require noise. He accepted Gregory's handshake with the measured warmth of someone who respected results and was withholding final judgment on the man delivering them. Rachel Donovan was already there. She stood slightly apart from the two men with a glass she hadn't touched and her phone face down on the bar beside her notepad, which meant she was paying attention to everything. Sharp green eyes. Dark blazer. The particular quality of stillness that belongs to journalists who have learned that people reveal more when they believe they are simply being agreed with. Gregory was in the middle of a sentence before he had fully arrived. 800 million, he said, as though the number were a toast. Signed, sealed, and sitting on a table upstairs. You know what that does to our Q3 projection, Leonard. He didn't wait for the answer. It rewrites it. Leonard offered a measured smile. It rewrites it if it closes. It's closing tonight. Gregory picked up his glass. The investors already confirmed. Mystery man, big money, no taste for the spotlight. He laughed at that. Honestly, the quiet ones are the easiest. Rachel wrote nothing down. But her eyes moved, just once, across the room. Clara Whitfield had been in the room since 7:15. That was how she worked. Early enough to know where every exit was, where the sight lines opened up, which staff member was likely to be helpful and which one was likely to be a problem. She had her tablet, her earpiece, and the particular brand of invisible competence that made people look through her even when she was standing directly in front of them. She preferred it that way. Invisible meant useful. Useful meant she could do her job. Her job tonight was simple. Be present. Take notes. And make sure nothing went wrong before Alexander had the chance to make it right. She had spotted him the moment he cleared the entrance. Not because he was loud. Not because he drew attention. Precisely because he didn't. Clara had worked for Alexander Sterling for 4 years, and in that time she had learned that the specific quality of stillness he carried, that particular combination of ease and observation, was something that could not be faked and could not be mistaken once you knew what you were looking for. He was standing near the far column with his hands in his pockets, watching Gregory Vaughn hold court at the bar with the calm, unhurried attention of a man who was gathering information rather than forming opinions. He had not approached anyone. Had not introduced himself. Was giving the room exactly what the room had decided he was worth, nothing, and was content to let it stay that way. Clara began moving toward him. She was 12 feet away when Gregory laughed at something Leonard said and turned, glass in hand, and his gaze traveled the room in that sweeping proprietary way it did when he was looking for somewhere to put his energy. It landed on Alexander. Stayed there one beat too long. Clara stopped. She had seen that look before. Not from Gregory specifically, but from men built the same way. Men who needed a target to feel tall. She caught Alexander's eye across the room. Mouthed the word sorry. He nodded once. Small. Steady. He already knew. He had walked in here knowing. That was the part that broke her heart. It started the way these things always start, with an audience. Gregory had been working the room for 20 minutes by the time he made his way to the far column, and by then he had enough momentum behind him that stopping felt like the wrong option. Leonard was watching from the bar. Rachel was watching from the edge of the stage. 200 people were doing the particular social calculation of the very wealthy, deciding where to look without appearing to look. Gregory stopped in front of Alexander with the easy confidence of a man who had never once in his adult life considered that he might be wrong about something. "I don't recognize you," he said. Not a greeting. A challenge dressed as one. Alexander looked at him with the calm, level attention he gave everything. "No," he said. "You wouldn't." Something shifted in Gregory's expression. Not anger yet. Something closer to the decision to be angry. The moment a man like Gregory chooses his performance and commits to it. "This is a private event," Gregory said, louder now. "Loud enough. VIP guests only. I'm sure you understand." He turned just slightly toward the nearest tables as he said it, making sure the words had somewhere to land. A few heads turned. Then a few more. Alexander said nothing. And that silence, that complete, unbothered silence, was the thing that undid Gregory entirely. Because a man who says nothing when he should be defending himself is either defeated or dangerous, and Gregory, who had never once in his life encountered the second kind, assumed the first. He reached for the nearest glass. Red wine. Full pour. "Let me help you find the exit," Gregory said, and tipped it. The wine spread across Alexander's shirt and jacket in one cold, decisive movement. Someone gasped. Someone else raised their phone. Then several more. The string quartet faltered and stopped. The nearest conversation died mid-sentence. 200 people watched Alexander Sterling stand perfectly still, wine dripping from his jaw, and say absolutely nothing. He looked down at the stain. Then up at Gregory. And smiled. He did not hurry. That was the first thing people would remember afterward, when they replayed it the way you replay something that doesn't sit right, the way he moved. Not the wine, not Gregory's laugh. Not the phones going up around the room like a slow mechanical bloom. What they would remember was that Alexander Sterling wiped his jaw with a folded edge of his pocket square, set it neatly on the table beside him, and walked toward the exit with the unhurried ease of a man who had somewhere better to be. No raised voice. No backward glance. No moment of visible anger that Gregory could point to later and call a victory. Just the walk. Gregory watched him go with the wide, loose satisfaction of someone who had just performed well and knew it. He turned back to the nearest table with his glass raised slightly, the universal gesture of a man collecting his applause, and found enough complicit smiles to confirm what he already believed, that he had handled something, that he had protected the room from something, that the quiet man in the charcoal suit had been exactly what Gregory had decided he was. Nobody corrected him. Clara was already moving toward the exit, tablet against her chest, weaving through the crowd with her eyes fixed on the door Alexander had just passed through. She did not run. Running would draw attention, and attention was the last thing either of them needed in the next 5 minutes. But her pace had the tight, controlled urgency of someone who understood that the window between what just happened and what was about to happen was closing fast. Behind her, Rachel Donovan had not moved from her position near the stage. She was watching the door. Her notepad was open. Her pen was still. She was not writing anything down because she was not ready to reduce what she had just witnessed to words yet. She was still in the part of the story where you simply watch and wait and trust the instinct that has never once been wrong. Something about that smile. That was the part she could not stop thinking about. The cold hit him the moment the doors closed behind him. He stood at the top of the hotel steps for exactly one breath, looking out at the line of cars along the entrance and the city beyond them, unhurried and indifferent the way cities always are when something small and devastating is happening inside one of their buildings. His driver saw him and reached for the door handle. Alexander raised one finger. Not yet. He reached into his inside pocket and took out his phone. The screen lit his face in the dark. He found the contact, pressed call, and brought it to his ear. It rang once. Sir. The voice on the other end was alert in the way that people who work for Alexander Sterling learn to be alert, at all hours, in all circumstances, without complaint. Alexander looked out at the street. When he spoke, his voice carried the same quality it always carried. Low. Unhurried. Completely certain. Pull the offer. Lock every channel. Announce it in the room. Tonight. A pause of exactly 2 seconds. Not hesitation. Confirmation. Understood. Timeline. Now. He ended the call. The whole thing had taken 43 seconds. He knew because he had looked at his watch before he dialed. An old habit, the kind that builds up in men who have learned that precision matters more than drama when the stakes are real. Clara came through the doors behind him, slightly breathless, and stopped when she saw his face. She had worked for him long enough to read the stillness correctly. She did not ask if he was all right. She did not apologize again. She simply stood beside him with her tablet open, already pulling up the accounts, the legal threads, the interlocking financial channels that were, at this precise moment, beginning to close one by one like doors being locked from the inside. It's moving, she said quietly. He nodded. Buttoned the lower button of his jacket over the wine stain with 2 careful fingers. Inside the Elysian Grand, the string quartet was still playing. For now. The quartet stopped mid-phrase. Not at the end of a movement, not at a natural pause, mid-phrase, the way music stops when something has interrupted the person playing it rather than the music itself. The cellist looked up first. Then the violinist. Then the room, which had been doing the low, self-satisfied hum of a party at its peak, began to register that something had changed. The screens changed first. The Hale Quantum logo, silver lettering, slow rotation, the visual shorthand for everything this evening had been built around, flickered once, twice, and then was replaced, on every screen simultaneously, by a single block of clean white text. The Sterling Group hereby terminates all partnership negotiations with Hale Quantum Systems, effective immediately. All financial instruments are frozen pending review. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Then the room detonated quietly, not with noise but with the specific chaos of 200 people reaching for their phones at the same moment, the collective sharp intake of breath that precedes understanding, the low urgent murmur of people saying the same words to each other in slightly different orders. Sterling. Sterling Group. What does that mean? Who is Sterling? Gregory Vaughn heard his own name first, someone saying it the wrong way in the wrong tone, with a particular inflection of a question that has just become a problem. He turned from the bar with his glass still in his hand and looked at the screen. Read it once. Read it again. His face did not collapse all at once. It went in stages, confusion first, then the beginning of anger, then something underneath the anger that was closer to the specific cold fear of a man who has just heard a door lock from the other side. Leonard Hastings already had his phone to his ear. His jaw was set. His eyes were moving across the room with the rapid assessing focus of a man calculating damage in real time. He turned toward the column near the far wall. The column where the quiet man in the charcoal suit had been standing all evening. Empty. Leonard found Clara first. She was standing near the lobby entrance with her tablet open, and she had the composed, unhurried expression of someone who had already moved past the part of the evening that had just destroyed everyone else. Leonard crossed the ballroom in 12 strides, and when he reached her his voice had the controlled urgency of a man who had not yet decided whether he was angry or afraid. "The Sterling Group," he said. "Alexander Sterling. Tell me that is not who I think it is." Clara looked at him with the calm patience of someone who had been asked a question they were not obligated to answer. "Mr. Hastings. The investor." Leonard's voice dropped. "The mystery investor behind the entire agreement. The one we have spent 4 months negotiating with through intermediaries." He stopped. Something moved across his face, the specific expression of a man watching 2 separate pieces of information collide into a single devastating conclusion. The man in the charcoal suit. Clara said nothing, which was its own answer. Leonard turned slowly and looked back into the ballroom, at the board members clustered around their phones, at the screen still displaying the termination notice in clean white text, at Gregory Vaughn standing at the bar with the glassy, disoriented expression of a man whose understanding of the evening was being rebuilt from the ground up in real time. "He was here," Leonard said. "Not a question. Working it out aloud. He came himself. No announcement, no introduction, no." He stopped again. Pressed 2 fingers to his mouth. "He wanted to see us. That was the whole point. He wanted to see who we were before he signed anything." He had seen. Behind Leonard, the board had gathered in a loose, stricken cluster. Someone had pulled up Alexander Sterling's profile on their phone and was holding the screen out for the others to see. The photo on it, taken at some industry function 2 years prior, showed a composed man in a dark suit with sharp features and calm, observant eyes. The same eyes that had watched Gregory Vaughn pick up that wine glass. The same eyes that had not looked away. They found him in the lobby. He was standing near the coat check with Clara beside him, unhurried, as though he had simply stepped out for air and was in no particular rush to go anywhere. His jacket was still stained. He had not changed, had not covered it, had not done anything to erase the evidence of what had happened in that room. Leonard noticed that detail and felt the weight of it in a way he could not immediately articulate. Leonard reached him first. Gregory followed 2 steps behind, and the distance between them was its own kind of information. Leonard moving with the grim purpose of a man trying to contain a disaster, Gregory moving with the diminished energy of someone who had not yet fully accepted that the disaster was him. "Mr. Sterling." Leonard's voice was measured. Careful. The voice of a man spending his composure like a currency he knew was running low. "I owe you an apology that I am not sure words are adequate for. What happened in that room tonight was inexcusable and does not represent this company or the people in it." Alexander looked at him with the same calm, level attention he gave everything. He did not rush to respond. He let the words settle. Then Gregory spoke. "If you had just," he stopped. "Started again. If it had been clearer who you were, none of this would have." "That's enough, Gregory." Leonard's voice was sharp, but Alexander raised one hand slightly. It was all right. He had heard it. He had in fact been waiting for it, that precise sentence, that particular shape of an apology that was still, underneath everything, a justification. He looked at Gregory for a long moment. Then at Leonard. "You didn't know who I was," he said quietly. "I understand that. But you knew I was a person. And that was enough information to make a different choice." He paused. "You made yours. I've made mine." Leonard tried once more. A number. A revised offer. A future. Alexander picked up his coat. "The number was never the point, Leonard." He nodded to Clara. They walked to the door. He did not look back. If this story hit different, if Alexander's patience, his silence, and the way he let the truth speak for itself stayed with you even a little, then you already know what to do. Hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment below telling us what moment got you the most. And share this with someone who needs to be reminded that dignity is never the wrong choice. We'll see you in the next one.